right, seeing none, let's move on to new business. For possible action to approve Solid Solution Geosciences water project, a change order. All right, Brianna or Corinne, who would like to talk about this?
I'm going to let Brianna do most of the talking about the change order, but I just wanted to, of course, introduce Brianna to the board. I do plan to have her at, I believe, our next meeting to be there in person and meet the board at a public meeting. But in light of the change order and the fact that now that we're under contract, it's not necessarily an emergency that I was comfortable to make the decision on administratively, I requested the special meeting so that the board had an opportunity to hear from Brianna what she's seeing. She has provided an updated matrix on repairs that are and other items that they're working on and that they're observing at the water treatment plants and the wastewater treatment plant. That matrix will be provided to the board in the packet as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brianna.
All right,
thanks, Corinne.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mayor Bachran and Corinne. I really appreciate the opportunity to actually talk to you all about such an important subject. As you know, your guys' water system is almost infamous at this point. It's in the news. We became involved. I had spoken with Corinne and a little bit with Dave last spring. And I do a lot of discharge monitoring reports, and you guys had a lot of late ones. And we thought, oh, maybe there's an opportunity to help you out. And then I didn't really hear from anyone again, and we didn't talk a whole lot until right before Christmas, when Corinne called and said, oh my goodness, our water operator is leaving. And what, can you help? And do you have any suggestions? And just this past fall, I started working with Josh Moore, who's operating your plants right now. He is a professional operator, certified Class A, with experience on plants throughout the state. He was not someone I was working with back in March, so I feel like it's almost kismet that we were able to help. When he got back from his Christmas vacation, we went out to the plants and we were a little surprised at what we saw. We saw plants that were very dirty, mouse droppings, clutter, things not related to water plants being stored in there. The usual instrumentation for readings that are required 1 to 3 times a week is not present. There is no standard operating procedure written down for any activity, which means that it can't be delegated. For an operator to allow someone else to do work, there has to be a written plan for that person to follow. That's law. So that was just in the wastewater plants. We were taken aback for sure. Even the repairs that are needed, just from what we saw, just from a walkthrough. We asked for data, but weren't shown any. We asked for certain documents, but were told that they were either on a drive or in his email, or the information was available on a logger. None of that turned out to be true. And what I don't want to do here is I don't know how things got to be the way they are, but they're not in good shape. And that was just our impression from the wastewater plant. A lot of repairs were needed, and a lot of attention is needed. So when we wrote this first scope of work, we still hadn't seen the Lamborn plant.
Recording in progress.
For your drinking water, which is definitely, more important to human health, although I hate seeing a wastewater plant not in good condition either and not up to snuff. But knowing the high level of repairs needed to the distribution system that have been well documented in the papers and things like that y'all lost water in 2019. But knowing that someone had to come in and do the basic sampling and at least get an idea. This first proposal went out not wanting to take responsibility for any repairs at all. There's too many. They can't be done. And I know it sounds like maybe I'm throwing somebody on their bus. I'm not. This situation is guaranteed by the lack of staffing these plants have. There is no way one person or two people even could manage 3 different plants. It's not possible. And so given that we are 2 people, we definitely also need to limit our scope to focus on what was the most important, which is getting this stuff written down and trying to get all your reports in and trying to keep you guys in drinking water. So when we were finally given the keys, unfortunately, the previous operator was not able to make that meeting. The keys by Corinne, and we went out to Lamborn plant. We had toured it before. There was a foot of water in the back. There were numerous leaks that couldn't be identified just by walking through because there's so many that until you start to plug some up, you don't know where the other water is coming from. So when we finally got in there, the chlorine level had been turned down to an illegal level by the previous operator. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just short on chlorine or an accident. I don't know, but that will show up as a violation for you all probably in the January MOR report. From the get-go, we were like, there's no way we can handle all these repairs. We are not electricians. We are not excavators. We are not pipe fitters. We're not construction workers, and you don't want to pay our rates for those kinds of services, quite frankly. But pretty quick, the repair calls started coming in, and needs for urgent repairs started to become apparent. And so we did respond. For example, half an hour of the time that was out of scope on repairs was a pump down in the wastewater treatment plant that had gone, on our first visit there, we saw that it was quite bad, but there were not sufficient spare parts in stock to fix it. One of the first things Josh did was order those spare parts, but before he could get them and get it replaced, because there's so many things to do, the pump finally went south, and you guys had a chlorine exceedance discharge to the river, which will show as an exceedance in your January. The thiosulfate that kills the chlorine, that's the pump that went bad. So the chlorine just went out. So I think, I understand some concern about us coming back and asking for additional money. I understand probably a lot of concern with the amount of money to begin with. We are trying to be responsible, and that's part of the reason we're not doing repairs. Then we'd have to contract an excavator. You guys have those people. We just need to tell them what needs fixed. But unfortunately, some of those fixes couldn't wait, or some of them could be done really quickly, and some of them take engagement on Josh's part. And Josh and I have had some conversations about what our scope actually is, believe me, and that it wasn't supposed to be a lot of repairs that he was getting calls to participate in from the town of Paonia, Public Works Department, and Corinne and others. But I think it's necessary that he have some ability to comment and potentially direct repairs, as he's the one now with the most experience in your system. He's the one that's trying to make it go according to the rules. And so with that, and seeing how many repairs he's being called on, I did let Corinne know I want a change order in front of you all. And I appreciate your time in considering it. I imagine you all might have a lot of questions. And one thing I wanted to suggest is that the town, or even other concerned townspeople, come and look at the plants and understand them. I think the best thing that could come out of all of this is an increased awareness of your water security and your obligations as a town and as board members, as future board members, as interested citizens. That'll help keep things running smoothly into the future once they're corrected. Because I I read in several papers, oh, you run these plants, it takes like 20 hours a week. It takes full-time employees to run the plant, and it's going to take more to fix them. And I think that JDS Hydro also said that a few months ago. So I would really love to help the board, the town, the citizens engage and understand the value of this resource and help maintain the assets that make fresh drinking water possible. You know, like 80% of people in the world don't have water delivered to their house like we do, and there's a reason for that. It takes a lot of coordination, and it takes to make it safe. It takes constant attention. So I guess I would love to open it up to any questions you guys might have for me. I'm sure there's a lot.
Okay.
You guys are up here. That's why I'm looking up.
Oh, okay. All right, Tammy.
So yeah, it's kind of like, where do you begin? I think that the discussion about the larger picture is, we need that discussion to take place in a completely different area. But I think what we're lacking is just like, what are the repairs that need to be made to justify the extra $7,200? What are we looking at specifically? I don't think we really see that in this.
I can start with
my first question.
Sure. I did send all of my hours with detailed time comments in some typical information I prepare with every invoice that I send. I always send detailed time comments. So you guys are free to read those. Corinne has them. I have not yet sent the invoice, but that's going to be forthcoming. And I have not included the change order in the invoice because it's out of scope. If you approve the change order, I'll include it. If not, lose money. But that's my project management problem. I should have come sooner, and I should have caught sooner that this work was happening and was not in scope, and been very forceful about it. However, to start, the first repair that's in there is, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure this is the first repair, was when we took over the plant, the alarms had been disabled. So the first thing we did is we turned up the chlorine to the legal level, and then we turned on the alarms. And those alarms went off multiple times an hour, all night long, in a row. At that point, it was a holiday weekend. They were mostly nuisance alarms, but if you turn off all the alarms and there's a flood, then you don't know which is the nuisance and which isn't. So the first fix was calling Filter Tech to have them log into the system to correct the nuisance alarms. That's the first one. There's numerous distribution system calls. As you guys, I'm sure you're all aware, you guys had a lot of water disruptions in the past couple of weeks. So many times Josh was by himself at the plant and called and asked to look in on those. There are no standards written for how one would repair your pipeline. So that's something that has to be addressed from an engineer. Another repair was the one that I described with the chlorine pump, not the chlorine pump, excuse me, it's the thiosulfate pump, the sodium thiosulfate that neutralizes the chlorine so that it doesn't damage the macroinvertebrates in the river. That thiosulfate pump that prevents that damage to life in the river had failed. It was functioning in the morning. It was not functioning at 4:45 in the afternoon when I went down there. And so I repaired that so that we could call the state the next day to report the violation as required. Because it was a daily maximum violation of the permit. and tell them it was already corrected. And so I came back the next morning. Chlorine was back down to an acceptable level at the outfall. And we called with Corinne and Josh, called the state about it. Would you like me to continue? You do have a full list in front of you, or hopefully in front of you. If it's not in front of you, it can be.
So I guess I was just misunderstanding. I thought it was what needed to be done, but this is already done. Is that correct? This work is already done.
Some of this stuff is already done. There is a very, very long and unimaginably expensive list of things that need to be done. But on that is, I think, critical, but it should be, because there are no standards written, it needs to be an arm's length of, hey, this is what I'm seeing when he's talking to the people doing the repairs. We can't take full responsibility for repairs. We are simply not electricians. We are not excavators. We don't have those tools. We don't have those skills. What we have is a world-class operator, and I hope that we can keep him interested in Paonia. He really is like, it's like watching him run a plant. He's really good at it. Talking to boards, not his thing.
Yes, Paige. Oh,
I wondered if you said you had to call Filter Tech, and we did receive in this packet that Corinne has also been talking to Filter Tech. Could you very specifically explain how long Filter Tech has been helping, who exactly they are, and then secondly, I'm just putting this out to Corinne for the next board meeting. I believe we made a motion at the last board meeting to see the reports from SSG, previous ones and the most current ones. So I'm hoping that those reports are in the agenda packet in the absence of knowing. So
yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Brianne, I'll get off, and if you can tell us about Filter Tech.
I'm going to start with the last first. There has not been yet a report from SSG because we've only been involved in billing and had access to the site for 2 weeks. We are working on it, and I've built a matrix that I will continue to share that is intended to be a tool to guide the town. It's the audit. It's here's the list. And it has with it rationale for why it's important, how urgent it is, and a status column so that it can be tracked as the necessary other entities become involved. So that in terms of our deliverables, there's only one deliverable that's actually going to be a deliverable, and everything is draft until that comes out. We're working on it. It should be really soon. Filter Tech has been involved longer than us. Filter Tech designs the plant. I'm sure that there are people on this call, like Corinne, that know more about Filter Tech than I do. They design the plant. They service the software that allows for remote monitoring of the plant, so you don't have to have people on site 24/7, because then you're talking 6 people that you would need to run them. And they do the calibration work for the instruments that are sensing whether there's a chlorine problem or not, things like that. I don't know the ins and outs of Filter Tech's contract with the town. That's what I know about Filter Tech. I know they were out yesterday looking at the skid 2 leak and pump issue, valve issue. And I know that they would be the first people we recommended. Josh recommended them, and there's a reason. It's their plant, it's their system, and they can work on it for less than we would with the right skill sets. They probably have an electrician of their own.
They do. So, Mayor, if I may.
yes, please.
So yes, on site yesterday was Deb Jensen and Chris Schotten. Deb Jensen is the one who actually designed our plant. She They're the engineering firm. Brianna gave an accurate description of what they did. They do have crews that do support and repairs on the plants that they design. They did have the crew out doing, and I asked them to come out and assist doing basically their own audit of their system, taking a look at what they've designed and what they also see as things that they can assist with repairs and what that cost would be. Deb, I've also provided Deb the matrix that I received today. Through that matrix of repairs that Josh and Brianna have seen on site to come back and let us know, yes, this is what our repair crews can provide and what timeline that would take and what that cost would be. So again, when I say that I'm including reports from Brianna, it is not the deliverable that was outlined. It's just the communications. That's the information they've also requested to see, Brianna. So they'll see that matrix, even though it is a draft. And I'll provide them the update on like lock changes and things like that that aren't updated on it. So that's who Filter Tech is. They are very involved. I'm also in communication with JDS and with, and so that of course would be Doug and James, the two individuals with JDS Hydro that you've met and have been working on our project, and Brandon Bear with SGM, who's been the primary engineer for the town for several years, the one we've contracted with. They're all reviewing the list that has come out from SSG, as well as reviewing other documents related to our long-term search for a contract ORC. And I'm also working on the staffing portion to the wastewater system, and that's moving along pretty well.
Yes, Paige.
Corinne, I was wondering if you can give us a general idea of how much has been spent to date over and above the work order with SSG. Kind of a ballpark.
I can't tell you specific to SSG, but I actually had Cindy pull a report for the water stuff that we've done for the year in my stack, but I don't know the number offhand, but I'll look for that while talks a little bit more. Filter Tech is just starting to send in information. I haven't gotten any estimates yet.
And
but
that's what I meant.
Yes.
I was wondering about Filter Tech and the additional work that I'm sure it's not free to talk to JDS and SGM about the big picture. So I'm kind of curious. And I only bring it up because Travis's everything, his salary and all his benefits and taxes was $113,000. So I'm kind of curious how close we are to that in terms of having, a set of funding that we already had agreed to. How much we're going over that, and that is certainly another conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can tell you right now that JDS and SGM have been stepping up and providing advice because they understand the situation, and they have not, there has not been any additional billing required for that assistance. Everyone really has stepped up and realizes that unfortunately the situation we're in is bigger than we were aware of, and generous in their time.
Yes, Brianna.
Thank you, Mayor Bachman. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in that it's really common for consulting entities, including SSG, to do preliminary evaluations at no cost. So, for example, we toured all those plants and had some sit downs with Corinne at no cost to the town of Paonia. I did not pass that along, and it's because in order to write a decent contract, you have to know what you're getting into, and we certainly could not have possibly known. We knew there were repairs. That's all we knew. As we dig in, we understand the level of repairs and the level of engagement that it's going to require. And it's going to be far more than SSG's engagement. It really is going to take a team.
Yes, Corinne.
I'm just going to let you know that I did go back and look at the emails that I've gotten from Filter Tech, and they haven't sent the actual cost yet, but for the full day that they were at the plant yesterday and the work, they were estimating about $1,800, and that was 2 people. For a full day, and that includes the repair, the parts and repair. But now that they've been there and they're reviewing that along with the matrix, they are going to send an updated and accurate accounting.
Their billing rates look to me to be around 105 a person on the repair. I did the math because I know that people will be able to do it for less than SSG.
All right, Paige, you had your hand up.
Thank you. So this sort of begs a question: is because Travis was licensed by the state, is there some responsibility on Travis's part to the state that he was not necessarily performing the duties that he was licensed to do? Is there anything we need to report? This just it seems quite irresponsible.
Yeah, like I said, I'm reluctant to place blame on a single entity. However, certainly he certainly didn't quite check all the boxes for what an ORC is supposed to do. He couldn't have. He had too much on his plate. So that's into the difficulty with blaming him. He's a known entity to the regulators. And I think if he were to continue down the path, they would probably pull his license. That's my personal opinion. I am not a regulator. I am not a lawyer. And I don't think he could have done it better because he didn't have the staff to do it better. One person's never going to do it all. It was guaranteed he wasn't able to do it all. I don't know. If I was the town, I would leave that up to the state. You got bigger fish to fry. And unless you think he's got a lot of money and can help you pay for it, which, I think that's a discussion with a lawyer. I don't know. All we can say is what we see now. And what we see now is absolutely not compliant